For more than 60 years, the Grateful Dead were seen as an unbreakable, close-knit family. But only after Bob Weir passed away did an insider unexpectedly speak out, and what he revealed has left many wondering. How many truths have been buried for half a century? A performance praised as historic, carried out in secrecy. A dismissal decision never spoken of. And betrayals the band never wanted the public to know. It all began to surface when Hart decided to say what the Grateful Dead had never shared with the world. On January 10, 2026, Bob Weir died at the age of 78, closing one of the most enduring and complex partnerships in American rock history. To the public, it was the passing of an icon. But to Hart, it was the loss of a man who had stood beside him for more than 6 decades. From the most chaotic days of the counterculture movement to the moment the Grateful Dead became an inseparable part of America's musical legacy. Just one day after Weir's death, Hart, then 82 years old, posted an emotional tribute. Instead of simply praising talent or achievements, Hart unexpectedly opened a door into the shadows the Grateful Dead had rarely shared publicly. Betrayal, firings, and fractured relationships once thought impossible to mend. That tribute was not merely a farewell. It read more like a belated confession about the price the band had paid to survive. What made it even more painful was the context. The Grateful Dead had nearly lost their original soul. Phil Lesh had passed away just 3 months earlier in October 2024. In less than 90 days, the band lost 2 of its most vital pillars. For Hart, that post was not only for Bob Weir, but for an entire era that was officially coming to an end. After Bob Weir's death, his family revealed a truth that stunned fans. Weir had been diagnosed with cancer in July 2025. This information had never been made public while he was still appearing on stage, because Weir did not want illness to become the central narrative of his final years. Even more shocking was the fact that while quietly undergoing cancer treatment, Bob Weir still stepped onto the stage for 3 60th anniversary Grateful Dead shows at Golden Gate Park in August 2025. In front of a combined audience of around 180,000 people, no one knew that the man standing before them was battling a life-threatening disease. Weir did not seek sympathy. He chose to preserve the fullness of the musical experience for the audience, exactly as he had lived his entire life. The final song Bob Weir performed was Touch of Grey, a choice rich with symbolism. Its lyrics about enduring adversity, acceptance, and moving forward became a wordless farewell. The family confirmed that Weir had beaten cancer, but ultimately passed away peacefully due to lung complications, as if his body had completed its final mission after delivering one last musical gift to the fans. In his post following Weir's death, Hart revealed a little-known detail. Jerry Garcia had once admitted that the harmonies Bob Weir created directly inspired his legendary guitar solos. This contradicted the common perception that Weir merely played a background rhythm role behind Garcia. Bob Weir's guitar style was nearly unique in American rock. With long fingers and an unconventional harmonic mindset, Weir did not play rhythm guitar in the traditional sense. He created open, non-standard chords that filled sonic space without overlapping the solos. This difference shaped the signature sound of the Grateful Dead, music that did not rely on fixed structures but continuously moved and interacted. According to Hart, without Weir, the Grateful Dead could not have evolved into such a complex improvisational force. Weir did not merely keep time, he opened pathways for the creative freedom of the entire band. Although often portrayed as a tightly bonded collective, the history of the Grateful Dead was not without deep fractures, some originating from those closest to the band. One of the greatest shocks occurred in the late 1960s and early 1970s, when Hart's father, Lenny Hart, acting as the band's business manager, was discovered to have embezzled approximately $155,000. At the time, this sum was not only a severe financial loss, but a direct threat to the band's survival. The incident quickly shattered internal trust. For the other members, this was not merely a managerial failure, but a betrayal from within the Grateful Dead family. For Hart, the blow was even more personal. Though he was not accused of direct involvement, The shame and guilt over his father's actions made it impossible for him to continue sharing the stage with his bandmates. In 1971, he chose to leave the band, a decision driven more by personal honor than musical disagreement. The period away from the Grateful Dead marked the darkest chapter of Mickey Hart's life. Without the band as an anchor, he spiraled into addiction, particularly heroin. Hart later admitted that it was a time when he lost his sense of direction, when music, once his source of balance, could no longer pull him out of emptiness. It was not until 1974, after gradually overcoming his personal crisis, that Hart returned to the Grateful Dead, bringing sobriety and a transformed relationship with the remaining members. The band's decision to welcome him back showed that, despite deep wounds, the Grateful Dead chose reconciliation over severance. Bob Weir was not an exception in this chain of internal conflicts. In late 1968, as the Grateful Dead sought to push their musical boundaries, Jerry Garcia and Phil Lesh made a controversial decision to remove Bob Weir and Pigpen from the band. The reason given was blunt and cold. They believed Weir and Pigpen's musical abilities were no longer keeping pace with the group's increasingly complex direction. This was not a personal dispute, but a strategic choice, though the emotional consequences for those involved were profound. For Bob Weir, being pushed aside was the first major shock of his career. Instead of responding with resentment or withdrawal, Weir chose to confront his weaknesses head-on. He entered an almost obsessive period of practice, completely reworking his approach to rhythm guitar, studying harmony and musical structure in depth. Just months later, Weir's visible progress forced Garcia and Lesh to reconsider their original decision. He was welcomed back into the band, not out of sentiment, but because he had proven his new musical value. These darker chapters reflect the true nature of the Grateful Dead, not a romantic collective always in harmony, but a group of artists who placed music above personal relationships. Decisions to fire, leave, or reunite were painful, yet they played a crucial role in shaping the band's long-term path. By confronting betrayal, failure, and conflict head-on, the Grateful Dead survived, evolved, and ultimately became one of the most enduring symbols in the history of American rock music. If the internal conflicts reveal that the Grateful Dead were not a perfect family, then the behind-the-scenes stories expose even more clearly the historical context from which the band emerged. The Grateful Dead did not exist only in music. They were a direct product of the American counterculture movement of the late 1960s, a time when the boundaries between personal freedom, artistic experimentation, and recklessness nearly ceased to exist. In 1967, as Haight-Ashbury became the epicenter of the hippie movement, police unexpectedly raided the band's communal house. When law enforcement burst in, Bob Weir was practicing yoga, an image both ironic and perfectly reflective of the Grateful Dead's spirit at the time. Rather than avoiding the media, the band held a press conference and issued a shocking statement. They claimed drugs were the least harmful chemicals for recreational purposes. From a modern perspective, this statement is clearly controversial, but in its historical context, it reflected the widespread belief of a generation attempting to challenge old social norms. Mickey Hart later admitted that the band did not fully grasp the long-term consequences of such an extreme lifestyle. Those seemingly rebellious actions both fueled creativity and quietly laid the groundwork for many personal tragedies. This lack of boundaries created music that could never be replicated, but it also kept the Grateful Dead perpetually on the edge of collapse. Another story Hart recalled carries a tone that is both humorous and hard to believe. The band and actor Woody Harrelson once smoked marijuana in Al Gore's basement, while Gore and his wife were showering upstairs. This anecdote was not meant as bragging, but as an illustration of the strange intersection of music, politics, and popular culture in the Grateful Dead's world. The band did not operate on the fringes of society. They existed at the very center of America's most significant cultural shifts. The peak of this one-of-a-kind spirit came with their trip to Egypt in 1978. The Grateful Dead spent approximately $500,000, an enormous sum at the time, to perform in front of the Great Pyramids of Giza during a total lunar eclipse. Financially, it was an almost irrational decision. Logistically, it was full of risk. Symbolically, however, the concert embodied the band's core philosophy. Music should not be constrained by location, time, or conventional business logic. The death of Jerry Garcia in 1995 did not merely end a musical era. It exposed fractures that had long been simmering within the Grateful Dead. When the central figure, both spiritual leader and unifying force, was gone, the band immediately drifted into disorientation. Without Garcia at the center, disagreements that had once been contained by music began to surface. In the years that followed, key members became entangled in a series of disputes over the Grateful Dead name, their musical archives, and how the band's legacy should continue or come to an end. These were no longer creative conflicts, but legal and business battles, particularly difficult to accept for a band that had once prided itself on freedom and resistance to systems. The fiercest conflict revolved around Phil Lesh. Around the period from 1998 to 2001, Lesh publicly wrote open letters stating that he would never again perform with Bob Weir and Mickey Hart after serious disagreements. For fans, this was a profound shock. The Grateful Dead, a symbol of community and unity, were now divided by the very people who had created it. For the members themselves, it was a moment of reckoning, an acknowledgement that friendship was not immune to the pressures of power and money. Mickey Hart later reflected on that period with rare candor. He admitted that after Jerry Garcia's death, no one truly knew what to do next. Each person carried private grief, yet lacked a shared space for dialogue. In that context, decisions were not always wise, and words spoken in moments of tension left consequences that lasted for decades. Time, however, also changes how people view the past. As age and illness set in, disputes that once seemed impossible to resolve began to feel small in the face of life's finitude. Before his death, Phil Lesh called Bob Weir to congratulate him on receiving the Kennedy Center honors, a brief call, but one with enormous symbolic weight. According to Mickey Hart, it marked the quiet closure of old conflicts, without public apologies or formal reconciliation statements, simply mutual recognition after a long journey. After all the loss, scandal, betrayal, and division, the greatest thing the Grateful Dead left behind was not revenue, the number of concerts or historical records, but the way they existed as an imperfect family. Bob Weir and Mickey Hart never denied their past mistakes. On the contrary, they acknowledged that those fractures shaped who they became and the music they created. The Grateful Dead survived not by avoiding conflict, but by continually returning to music as their final anchor. The final chapter of Bob Weir and Mickey Hart is tied to Dead & Company, where they passed the torch to a new generation through John Mayer. This collaboration was once controversial, but over time it proved one thing: a legacy only truly lives if it continues, not if it is frozen. Sold-out nights at the Sphere in Las Vegas, along with the Kennedy Center honors, were not merely commercial successes, but official recognition that the Grateful Dead had transcended a rock band to become part of American culture. Mickey Hart once said, "Once you're part of the Grateful Dead, you never get out of it." The statement does not imply entrapment, but an acknowledgement that relationships forged through music run deeper than any conflict. Bob Weir is gone, Jerry Garcia has passed, Phil Lesh is no longer here, yet their spirit lives on in every melody, every fan community, and every story retold across generations. Looking back at the entire journey, the story of Bob Weir and Mickey Hart is not just rock history, but a portrait of a creative relationship that endured every trial: being fired, embezzlement, addiction, internal hatred, and even standing on stage when death was already near. In the end, what kept them together was not fame or money, but an absolute loyalty to music. If this story has given you a different perspective on the Grateful Dead and Bob Weir, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss in-depth analyses of American cultural and musical icons. And what about you? What do you think makes the Grateful Dead immortal? The music, the sense of community, or the imperfect people who created it? Share your thoughts in the comments below.